Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the Gospel of Matthew, and we're in chapter 6. I want to introduce today the section, chapter 6, beginning with verse 1 through verse 18. Chapter 6, verse 18. Chapter 6 really is about our relationship with God, our private, personal relationship with God. He has talked in chapter 5, beginning with verse 21 through verse 48. He's talked about our relationships with each other and knowing how to live righteously by reading the Word of God properly in order to discern the will of God, looking for that simple truth that is clearly communicated that makes these large demands on our lives and the way we conduct our lives. Now he's going to be talking about our relationship to God. And he begins by telling us the way we express our love to God to God. God is love. But when we use the word love, love demands an object. No one ever just says, I love. Oh, I love. What? What do you love? Well, I love ice cream. I love to watch golf on television because I can't play it anymore. I love to play with my grandkids more than any other way to spend time. I love, I love, I love. Love demands an object of love. And we are the object of God's love. And God is to be the object of our love. That's the greatest command, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. And the second is like unto it, to love your neighbor as yourself. They're inextricably tied together. He's talked already about loving our neighbor. Now he's going to talk about loving God. And he says, he mentions 3 ways that we express our love for God. And these things are an expression of our private relationship with God. Now, lots of folks try to read chapter 6 and see it as contradicting chapter 5. Verses 13 and 14, where Jesus says, do your good deeds before men so they can glorify your Father in heaven. A place where Jesus says, be who you are and don't hide who you are, because that's necessary if you're going to change the world. You're necessary. Your difference is necessary. What Jesus is talking about now is about our personal relationship with God. We understand this. This is not difficult. When people have an intimate relationship with each other, publicly you know it and you see it. A husband and a wife, they sit together in church, or, even if they're, they're maybe separated by some distance in a room, you can almost always know, who belongs to whom. There's just this connection that's just evident to everyone around. And so when you're in a loving, relationship, an intimate relationship with someone, that's evident to all around. But there are private things between people who have a loving relationship with each other that are for each other and not for public display. And we know when those things are violated because they make us uncomfortable. And we've all known couples or persons who, or maybe even been in a relationship with someone who doesn't so much care for us so much as they care about putting something on display. And that's what Jesus is talking about. That's the difference between what he's talking about in chapter 6 and chapter 5. And so all 3 of these acts of righteousness, which are our expression of love to God, are done secretly. In other words, we don't let anybody else in the room. That doesn't mean that glimpses are not caught. You see a couple in the park and they're walking hand in hand and they stop and they kiss. I mean, that's a moment between them. It's not like they did that in the middle of the line at Starbucks. They're in a public place, but they're in a private moment as well. So the things that we do to express our love to God sometimes are seen and known, but that's not the point of them. The point of them is for us to say, in the act itself, I love you. And Jesus mentions three acts. He talks about acts of service and provision for those who are in need. He talks about prayer, communicating, time to talk to God, and he talks about fasting. And we'll talk about fasting as it can be applied expansively to a lot of areas of our life and what fasting is for when we get to that part about fasting. Okay, we're going to pick up with verse 1 next time of chapter 6. Thank you for joining me for 5 good minutes with the Word.